Welcome to CSG's eAcademy on a look at community solar programs. My name is Rebecca Fitzgerald, and I'm the Program Manager of Energy and Environmental Policy for the Council of State Governments. Today's eAcademy focuses on the increasing popularity of community solar. Interest in using solar energy to power homes continues to skyrocket, and while all homes may not be suitable for rooftop solar installation, there are alternatives for those looking to utilize solar power, and one of those alternatives is community solar. Today, our panelists will share some background on the increasing use and interest in community solar and give some specific examples of solar projects specifically with rural electric cooperatives, which are nonprofit consumer-owned utilities, and how they've invested to meet their members' needs. A few just quick logistical points before we get started. First, all participants will be in listen-only mode, but we greatly encourage you to submit your questions as you have them. You'll need to type them in the box located on the right-hand side, and we'll read those questions at the end of the presentation. If your question's for a particular speaker, just go ahead and note that with your question as you denote your question. We've got two great panelists today, and we're very fortunate to have them spend a little bit of their afternoon with us and share their expertise. And with that, I'll go ahead and introduce our first speaker, Chad Laurent, who is the Senior Consultant and General Counsel at the Meisters Consultant Group. Chad specializes in renewable energy law and policy, sustainable business strategies, and renewable energy project development. He's working with the U.S. Department of Energy, providing technical and outreach consulting for the Sunshot Solar Outreach Partnership and the Rooftop Solar Challenge. His solar expertise includes law, finance, zoning, solar access and rights, permitting, planning, and using planning as an economic development tool. Chad, welcome, and we look forward to your presentation.
Great. Thanks, Rebecca. So as Rebecca mentioned, I'm here on behalf of the Sunshot Initiative, which is part of the U.S. Department of Energy. Next slide. And we're part of the Rooftop Solar Challenge with the goal to reduce the soft costs of solar PV and working with local governments to reduce the costs of solar by attacking the soft cost portion. So currently, more than 60% of the cost of a solar PV installation is not due to hardware costs, but rather due to the soft costs such as permitting, installation, zoning, labor. So we're looking to streamline processes, local government processes to help drive down the cost of solar. And with that, our partners are the National Association of Regional Councils, the Mid-America Regional Council, and the Council of State Governments. Next slide. This map just shows the various organizations that we're working with. We have 10 regional partners, regional planning commissions across more than 13 states and Washington, D.C., where we're working with local governments and then also with the Council of State Governments at the state level to help bring down the cost of solar. Next slide. So through the presentation today, if I say solar or PV, I'm referring to solar photovoltaics, and that takes the sun's energy and converts it to electrons, which we use for electricity. There's also solar hot water, which takes the thermal energy from the sun, uses that to heat a fluid to create hot water, or also for heating and cooling, and then concentrated solar power, which uses mirrors to heat a solution that boils water to create electricity. Those are the three basic types of solar technology, but today we're just focusing on solar photovoltaic or PV. So if I say solar, that's what we're talking about. Next slide. So this map just is to remind folks that solar is a resource that works anywhere within the United States. So Germany has the world's largest installed capacity of solar PV, and as you can see from this map, they don't have a particularly good solar resource due to the fact that they're so far north. But here in the U.S., solar works in pretty much any state, or does work in any state. And just as an example, here in Boston, where I am, we get about 90% of the output from a solar PV installation as one that was installed in Miami. So while everyone thinks that where they are, at least if they're in the northern half of the country, that it's too rainy or cloudy or cold for solar to work. It's really not the case, and solar can be deployed pretty much anywhere based on resource. Next slide. So just a couple of snapshots of the global market for solar. As you can see, the market for solar has increased dramatically just in the last 5 or 7 years. Along that, the trend, the line going from left to right is the cost of just the modules. And so as you can see, since the 1970s, the cost of solar modules has come down about 99%. And in turn, the global market for solar in terms of the installed gigawatts has risen dramatically. And so the price declines and global supply has really driven demand for solar PV across the globe. Next slide. Similarly, here in the U.S., we follow those same market trends where, year on year, at least a 30% increase over the last couple of years of installed capacity for solar within the United States. So a really rapidly increasing and rapidly expanding market for solar. Next slide. And also the price in 2013 and now early indications of prices in 2014 are more than half the cost decline since 2009. So a lot of homeowners and businesses and others who looked at doing solar maybe just 4 or 5 years ago and found it to be too expensive, the cost is now about half what it was then. So again, there's a real opportunity in terms of cost declines, and many folks across the country are taking advantage of those reducing costs in solar to really expand the deployment. Next slide. And then along with that, solar industry jobs have also been increasing year on year. So it's been one of the fastest growing in terms of percentage areas of the U.S. economy, the solar industry, and those states with the largest solar markets have the largest number of solar jobs. Next slide. So that's just sort of a snapshot of the market, increasing demand and interest in solar, falling costs. And so community ownership has come up as a potential option for a number of folks and has seen increasing interest, as Rebecca mentioned. And community ownership, U.S. Department of Energy's definition, a solar electric system that provides power and or financial benefits to multiple community members. So you have one project that maybe is located off-site and numerous people are able to take advantage of the benefits from that system. Next slide. And the reason that it's become popular is that while anywhere in the United States has a fairly good solar resource in terms of the amount of sunlight that we get, only about 22 to 27% of residential rooftops are suitable for on-site solar. And this is because some roofs are facing, maybe the best spot is facing north, which wouldn't receive the most sunlight. The roof might be shaded. It might be an old structure that would be prohibitively expensive to reinforce in order to put solar PV on it. Or if it's a commercial building, there may be a lot of HVAC equipment that would cause shading on the roof. Or a number of people rent or are part of a condo association. And also commercial entities also don't often own the building that they're in. So either if you don't own the building or your roof is shaded or old, there's any number of reasons why you may not be able to do on-site solar. And so community solar is an option then available for those folks and businesses that may not be able to otherwise. Next slide. So what is community solar? It is, again, where individuals benefit directly from a system that's installed within their utility service territory, but not necessarily on their building. But that is to be distinguished. It's what we're not talking about is a Solarize or a group purchase discount program, if any of you are familiar with Solarize programs, or a crowd-funded project like Solar Mosaic or crowdfunding for a project on a nonprofit or somewhere within their community. So that's sort of a distinction, or keep that in mind as we go forward. Next slide. So currently there are more than 55 community solar programs or projects within the U.S., and more than 30 of those are utility-sponsored or utility-run programs. And we're seeing increase every year, more and more community solar projects coming online. Next slide. So there's 4 basic variations on community solar. So there's the utility-sponsored model, where the utility purchases and owns and operates the system and then offers a renewable energy purchase option to its customers. Sometimes it can be at a premium, sometimes it can be at a discount, but it's where the utility owns the project and manages that on behalf of its customers. There's an on-bill crediting option where residents or businesses quote-unquote invest, because it depends on investment. The definition depends on how the benefits are distributed to the participants in that program, and making sure that the system isn't operating under as a mutual fund or something like that under the eyes of the SEC. But residents and businesses invest and then work with the utility so that those folks who have participated in the program receive a bill credit from the electricity that's produced off-site on location. So either the municipal or co-op, municipal utility or co-op, or the investor-owned utility has to allow some form of aggregate or virtual net metering in order for that to work. The third is a business enterprise model, and this is where a number of individuals, they form a business and develop a project on their own, and then either tax credits or other benefits from the project, if there are renewable energy certificate sales from the project, those go to individuals who all pool their money to invest in a project. Here again, the SEC regulations around the number of accredited versus unaccredited investors that you can have comes into play. And then finally, there's a nonprofit buy a solar panel, similar to buy a brick type programs, where donors contribute to a system that is then owned by a nonprofit organization. So those are the 4 basic types of community solar that are currently out there. Next slide. So why would a utility be interested in a community solar project? So one, more customers can participate in solar programs that the utility might have. Again, renters can participate, and those that may have a shaded roof or otherwise, just to improve the equity and the opportunity for all to benefit from utility solar programs. There's generally a high level of customer satisfaction. Utilities, from what we've heard that have participated, see their members are excited about community solar programs and eager to participate in them. It has potential to improve economic development by increasing the number of solar installations within the utility service territory. Utilities can often get a larger economy of scale if they build a larger project, or if another entity builds a larger project. Oftentimes the cost per watt is slightly lower in a larger project, and so the savings can be greater for participants. The utility can work with whoever, either if they're owning the project or working with a third party to run a community solar project, can help locate that project strategically in order to maximize grid benefits, making sure that it's put in a location that if there's certain areas of strain or congestion on the utility's grid where siting distributed generation may benefit, the utility can work to determine the appropriate location of those systems. And then if you were to include battery backup, there's potential for backup power or more resilient on-demand power from a solar PV system as well. Next slide. So I want to take a brief detour from community solar and talk a little bit about the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Loan Program that is available through the Rural Utility Service. So this is a $6 billion pot of money that is available for rural utilities to access through the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And a loan can be taken out for energy efficiency or renewable energy projects from this loan fund. And a utility can in turn either make a consumer loan to its members for solar or energy efficiency improvements and then collect payments, or work with a servicing agent to collect payments on that loan. So it's a way for a utility to provide a very low interest loan to its either co-op members or members of the participants or community members. Also, the utility could pay for a system without making a direct loan to its members and recover its costs through a renewable energy opt-in tariff for specific customers or customer classes that wanted to participate. Another way for a rural utility to provide this type of benefit through the EECLP program. And so, for example, there could be a community solar opt-in program where the tariff includes the benefits of the project and the loan repayment for a customer's share of that project. So an interesting pool of money out there for rural utilities to access to help fund community solar programs for their members. Next slide. Just a little bit more background on the solar loans through the EECLP program. On-bill repayment of those loans is acceptable. The utility can recover costs through the rate base of the loans if the project reduces peak demand. And solar projects do have the potential to reduce peak demand, so that could allow cost recovery of those loans through the rate base. And then generally other financial recoupment mechanisms are also and may also be approved by the Rural Utility Service. So there's a certain amount of flexibility. A rural utility submits a business plan. Once that business plan is approved, then the funds can be distributed. Next slide. So the opportunity there for rural utilities, again, it's a $6 billion pool of money. There's an opportunity to lend to residential, commercial, industrial, small businesses, and farmers within the jurisdiction. Solar output often matches well with electricity use for pumping and irrigation, so it could potentially help reduce electric bills and on co-op members, particularly farmers. And small commercial systems, including systems on farms, have often been difficult to finance, and so a low-interest loan from the co-op could significantly help these customer PV markets, in particular the low interest rates associated with the EECLP program. Next slide. And so there's potential then to use the rural utility EECLP loan funds to do a community solar variation where a co-op utility would lend to a third party to own and operate and manage the PV system. The co-op utility could then allow its customers to purchase a right to the benefits in that PV system, and then the loan would be repaid by the customers, those customers who are paying into the benefits from that system. And then maybe they receive some form of net metering credit or credit for the electricity that the solar PV system is producing on their electric bill. And again, it's a sort of variation on one of the community solar models, the utility community solar model that are often administered by, currently being offered by municipal utilities and co-ops. Next slide. So this is just a schematic diagram of how this type of program would work, where the loan flows to the co-op. The co-op then disperses that loan to a solar installation or solar installer or community solar program manager, who then potentially takes the benefits of the investment tax credit and then is able to repay the loan through the co-op members, and then they receive some form of benefit on their electric bill. Next slide. So the next case study is no one has yet to date, to my knowledge, utilized EECLP funds for a community solar project, but these are just a couple of examples of municipal utilities and co-ops who have done community solar programs. So one, Taos, New Mexico, they have an agreement with Clean Energy Collective, which is a community solar program administrator. They built a roughly 100 kilowatt solar canopy project at a Taos charter school, and the net metering bill credits are available for their utility customers. It went online in 2012 and is fully subscribed and totally sold out. And so they've been exploring other ways that they might be able to do community solar projects, additional community solar projects. Next slide. Just again, a diagram of how the Kit Carson Electric Co-op structured their deal. The net metering credits and bill credits for the panel production from those panels went to the utility customer. The utility customer paid $845 a panel for the production to the Clean Energy Collective, and Clean Energy Collective signed a 20-year PPA agreement with the co-op for the sale of the electricity. Next slide. So given that there's been more than 55 community solar projects and 30 utility community solar projects developed across the country, there's some examples of best practices emerging. So one is to make sure and engage stakeholders, so ratepayers, solar installers, regulators, elected officials, to make sure you know, what everyone's expectations are of the program. Is there going to be enough demand for the program? What variations and types of programs are people interested in having developed? Have a plan for both for over and under subscription. So depending on the level of benefit from a program, there may be the ability or the need to manage wait lists, or have a plan for developing further projects. Usually it's the case where there's programs are oversubscribed. Under subscription, if it's more expensive than folks thought, or the benefits weren't, the value to the member wasn't what folks were expecting, having a plan for that as well. It's important to decide who owns the RECs, if that's applicable. If the utility owns the project, if there's no renewable portfolio standard, it's a moot point. And then make sure that there's some sort of value proposition to the customer, so they have some ability to reduce their electric bill with solar. Most folks are looking at participating in a solar project or investing in a solar project in order to save some money on their electric bill, or at least lock in their electricity rate for a certain term. And then making sure that billing and IT systems within the utility are capable of handling the logistics of managing either some form of remote or virtual net metering, or managing the matching up the supply from the community solar project with the demand from the customers who are participating. Next slide. One other example is Farmers Electric Co-op in Iowa, and there's a case study through the Solar Outreach Partnership and the Solar Electric Power Association. So farmers have done a number of innovative solar projects, including community solar projects, and they have about almost 2 kilowatts of solar installed per each co-op member. And they've used some variation on a feed-in tariff. They've also done upfront rebates for solar, and they did a community solar garden program recently as well. So they've tried a number of different solar programs and have installed a lot of solar to the great cheering from their co-op members as a result. Next slide. So just sharing a couple resources. The Solar Electric Power Association has a utility community solar handbook that was published through the Solar Outreach Partnership, and the Interstate Renewable Energy Council also has a model rules for shared renewable energy programs. Just 2 examples of resources available to learn more information about some of the details of community solar projects and how they've been implemented by other utilities. And then there's also great information on the Rural Utility Service EECLP website, which I can provide a link to Rebecca. But there's great information on the rural utility and that loan program available through that website. Next slide. I think that's it.
Great. Thank you so much, Chad. And again, just a reminder to those who are attending and listening in, if you have a question for either Chad or our next speaker, Ted, feel free to write that in the comment section or chat box, and we will get those questions answered at the end here. But next I want to introduce our next speaker, who's going to provide a few examples of rural electric co-op community solar programs, and that's Ted Joss, sorry Ted, Vice President of Marketing and External Relations at Tri-County Electric Cooperative, which is a rural electric distribution cooperative headquartered in Rushford, Minnesota. And he's also been working with Hawkeye REC, a rural electric cooperative based in Cresco, Iowa. He is responsible for managing the marketing activities, communications, public relations, government relations, and economic development, renewable energy and distributed generation, as well as the member services for these cooperatives, and is very familiar and been involved. So we look forward to you sharing your perspective, Ted. Thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Rebecca, and good afternoon to everyone that's listening. Chad did a great job of explaining community solar, and I'll be giving a utility perspective on many of the points that Chad brought up. Both Tri-County Electric Cooperative and Hawkeye REC are relatively small rural electric utilities. So we faced some unique challenges when we decided to go forward and develop a community solar project, and kind of the challenges are unique to smaller utilities that I'll kind of get into later in the presentation. First of all, I'd like to say, since I work for both cooperatives and we do share a lot in common, that Tri-County and Hawkeye jointly market their community solar projects as renewable rays, the power of cooperative solar. Both of the projects came online in July of 2014. Tri-County Electric Cooperative has a 73.8 kW PV system consisting of 180 410 watt 10K solar modules. The Hawkeye REC system is a 24.75 kW PV system consisting of 90 275 watt solar world modules. Both of the systems are located at the respective headquarters facilities. Got great access to the public and our members, and good place to showcase these, as well as on our websites, which have data loggers and all the information as far as production, historic, and current. So the first thing you might want to ask is why community solar, and why would an electric consumer want to participate in a community solar project? Chad touched on many of these. We were told by the national solar industry that on a national basis, 75% of the people who want PV can't. And really a lot of the reasons are poor solar resources and or shade specific to their location. You know, as Chad pointed out, everywhere in the United States has solar resources, but in specific locales and areas, they may not be able to, such as in somebody's yard. Inadequate structural support on their buildings, in particular for rooftop solar. Up in our part of the country, snow loading is a real concern, and buildings in some cases weren't designed for the added weight of PV systems. They may have no additional room on their property for ground mount systems, or there may be setback regulations that don't allow it to fit in the property footprint. There's also zoning restrictions by the municipalities, townships, counties that in some cases don't allow for PV systems or different types of distributed generation. We also have renters and condo owners that are members, electric consumers of our cooperatives, and don't have the ability to construct a PV system on their property either. And lastly, financial. Not everyone can afford their own system. And we felt it was important that that we address all of these with our membership. So the reasons we move forward were, and you might be thinking, well, why would an electric utility want to get involved in a community solar project? It does raise some good questions. Our reasons to move forward were, first and foremost, was our members' satisfaction. That was our biggest motivation. We've got a diverse membership. Our members own us, govern us through a elected board of directors. And while not everybody embraces renewable energy or wants to be a part of a community solar project or even own their own project, there was a significant portion of our membership that we had surveyed, and we had focus groups and advisory councils that expressed a real sincere interest in having an option to get involved with a project like this. Secondly, we wanted to learn and assess the potential for system benefits. By this I mean, how might a solar system bring efficiencies to our distribution system or possibly lower power costs for our members? Another reason that we embraced was the opportunity to enhance our community image. Being green is a good thing for a business, and we're no different in that respect. We also felt it was important to be proactive in regards to renewable energy. The board felt strongly about that. There's also a concern over third-party solar, and we want to continue to be the energy provider of choice for our member consumers. And lastly, we felt very strongly also about providing an economical option for all our members to obtain locally produced renewable energy, especially our low-income members. So really, when we started out, and this was quite a lengthy process that we engaged in over 4 years ago when we first committed to research and develop a community solar project, we ended up setting our project goals as firstly.
Sorry, Ted, I'm going to interrupt you just for a second. We're having a hard time hearing you. Can you just speak up just a little louder? Thank you.
Sure, sorry about that. Firstly, when we set our project goals, we wanted to develop a project that would ensure that no member cross-subsidization would take place. We wanted those that participated in the project to get the benefits and also pay, for their participation. We also wanted to raise our member satisfaction and improve our image, both with our members and the community, by offering a local solution for people to get more involved with renewable energy. We felt also that we wanted to design the project so we could use it as an educational tool for our members, for the cooperative, and the general public. It's a unique opportunity when you can have a local generation unit that people can get the information on that's installed at their location and under their weather conditions specific to their area. So it's a great opportunity for people to learn from this. We also wanted to improve the co-op's political and regulatory position by demonstrating that cooperatives can and are willing to promote renewable energy without mandates. And lastly, we wanted to discover how to use the solar production for our system benefits. We then had to come up with a business model, and that proved quite a challenge. As I said, we're smaller utilities, we're a nonprofit, and so coming up with a competitively priced program that could not take advantage of the variety of incentives that were typically offered was a real challenge. We ended up choosing to use a business model that is typically called a tax equity flip. And this is where the cooperative formed 2 LLCs to own and operate the array, and this was to meet the IRS regulations. Then we had to come up with a tax equity investor that puts upfront capital in the project in exchange for the federal tax investment credits, and then the ability to use advanced depreciation to make a return on their investment. And then thirdly, the members then provide the balance of the capital in exchange for units of capacity to produce renewable energy. They don't purchase any hardware. They do not purchase the panels or the modules. They're producing the energy output over a 20-year period. Then the co-op, lastly, credits the members for the kilowatt hours, the energy, produced on a monthly basis for a 20-year period. So how do the members participate? There's a minimum level of participation that is 1 unit. That's the smallest increment that any one consumer can purchase. Consumers and the members can only purchase up to the capacity to offset their energy usage, meaning that the production per unit cannot exceed their energy use for the month. There's no cash out provisions in this. It's designed to have people offset their energy use in the form of bill credits on a one-to-one basis. So the value of the units are based at whatever the retail rate is of the energy we sell, and whatever that rate will be for the 20-year period. So they're able to lock in their energy cost. The units are equivalent to the rated capacity of one PV module. In the case of Tri-County Electric, that's 410 watts. In the case of Hawkeye REC, that's 275 watts per module. The member pays the cost for the unit up front. You're essentially prepaying for the energy production and locking in the cost and for that energy over that 20-year period. So then each month, the total monthly production of the array is metered, measured, and divided by the total number of units that are in that system. Then each member receives the credit for the power produced by the number of units that they own. And that's an on-bill credit. And it's all in kilowatt hours. It's not monetized on the bill in any way. It's a direct offset, energy offset. As I said before, we did have some project constraints, and it really took a while for us to work out, and we eventually ended up partnering with some of our national cooperative partners to develop a solution, and became, I believe, the second or third cooperative in the nation to use this tax equity flip model to accomplish creating and developing our project. But on the local level, the constraints that we had was, first of all, our generation and transmission cooperative, which is our wholesale power supplier, had and has an all requirements contract, meaning that we are contractually obliged to purchase all our power from them and can't own any of our own generation. So we had to go through them to get a waiver that has a size limit. We could only own so much that allowed us to own the community solar project. The second big constraint, and as I was mentioned earlier, is that there's no incentives, at least at the time, for nonprofits. So churches, schools, municipalities, electric cooperatives, and the like can't use federal ITC. So that made it very difficult to get a competitively priced project. When we worked through the numbers, it just was not competitive with consumer-owned DG systems until we were able to get that tax equity flip model developed. And so that was a big hurdle that kept us from moving forward several years ago. The member-to-member subsidization. We did not have and had not worked out a mechanism at that time to make sure that this wasn't going to be a burden on the other ratepayers. That has since been worked out, and by the members subscribing to the project, they're bearing the cost of implementing the project and then get all the fully returns off the project. Then we were also facing, as Chad also mentioned, that with his graph on the cost of the hardware over time has really come down. And because we could not take advantage of tax incentives to lower our costs, we found for several years that it just was not competitive with member-owned generation or member-owned systems in this declining product cost market. Here again, we were able to work with our national partners, got part of a national buying cooperative where we could lower our cost and become competitive. Also a constraint or concern up front was an acceptable financial return. There's many different ways that the utilities are marketing and developing their community solar projects. We chose to have one that was a break-even proposition for the cooperative and also for the members. We weren't out to make any money on it. We were using these as pilot projects to learn from the exercise and also provide the renewable energy to our members who desired that. So we really just wanted to keep ourselves whole without subsidizing the project. And then lastly, the system benefits. As I've mentioned before, we were looking to see if it would provide system benefits. Well, prior to the project going up, we didn't know. It was an unanswered question. We didn't know if there would be adverse effects based on where it was located or the time when it had peak production versus when our system peaked. So that was all something that we were very interested to learn about. So kind of wrapping up, we did learn quite a bit in both the research phase of the project and now coming in on our first year of production. And really the main thing that we found is the technical part was the easy part. Functionality and technically both systems are performing very well. And the energy produced is meeting the production and sometimes exceeding the production expectations that were projected. We did learn that it was very important to have clearly defined project goals because there's so many different ways to structure a community solar project. You really have to have clear goals so you can pick the proper model. And determining that business model that would best meet your goals, and whether the goals for the members as well as the financial parameters of the project. You also need to assess the financial impact, both current and the impact that may happen down the road. A project like this is definitely creating revenue erosion. And what will that do to the utility? If it expands or if it encourages more consumer-owned distributed generation. All those need to be taken into consideration in how you will structure your rates and allocate costs in the future. So it's also a great opportunity to learn and figure out, because of the way the industry is changing, how the utility can adapt and then take advantage of the technology that's now out there. We also need to consider the human resources. Once again, being a smaller utility, workload, and the time it takes to both develop, install, and then the ongoing administration and management of the project throughout the lifetime of the project. I guess lastly, what we've learned also is that size really does matter, the capacity of the project. There is definitely economies of scale for the larger projects, and whether they're utility-owned or consumer-owned. And this really becomes a factor in making a project competitive, and it's going to be even more so in the future. Since we first contracted and locked our prices in after the RFP, which was almost a year prior to it being constructed, the prices dropped precipitously. And now, not even a year later, they've probably come down another 30%. So by creating a larger project, you can get a lot of those additional savings right up front. And then, as Chad also mentioned, the soft costs are divided up amongst much more capacity and much more energy production. So, Rebecca, I think I'll end there and be ready for questions.
Great. Thanks so much, Ted. I appreciate it. And we do have a few questions here, and if you have more that you think of, feel free to write them out as you think of them. This first question was directed for Chad. Is the rural financing program the same as the REAP program?
No, it's different. So the REAP program is also an opportunity, but this is a separate pool of money and slightly different funding structure. So there are two distinct programs.
Thank you. Do either of you have any examples of states that have made tax credits or incentives available to rural electric cooperatives that the RECs would compete for under that program, that their own state association or designee would then manage?
There are none in the two states that I work in, but we're pushing for legislation currently in the state of Iowa to do just that.
And I don't know of any off the top of my head.
Okay, thanks. Do you have any examples of communities doing buy a panel, crowdfunding to put solar on community buildings? This person would like to put solar on their fire stations, but the village doesn't want to pay for them, and so they would love some examples.
I do not have any at this time, and I'm not aware of any of the municipalities in the state that have done that.
Chad, do you know of any buy-a-panel crowd kind of funding source programs? You kind of step through some example or various examples of different project types. Oh, we may. I'll ask Chad again that question when he pops back on here. He's having some technical difficulties, and I'll ask him. We also had another question for him. Ted, one of the questions was, what happens when a member moves?
Oh, great question. We built that into the agreement knowing that our members wouldn't most likely remain on our lines for the entire 20-year period. So there's several different ways that we can make them whole. The cooperative can buy back the remaining portion that remains. They can be transferred to another member account. It can be transferred to another account that that member may have. So we make them whole if they move off the system.
Great. Chad, I think we have you back now. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, my phone has gone out a couple times, but I've been able to get back quickly.
All right. We had a question about communities doing a buy-a-panel crowdfunding type program. This questioner was interested in putting solar panels on community buildings and was wondering if there was any specific examples of something like that.
Yeah, so there's a company called Mosaic that has done a number of programs like that throughout the country. So I would look and see what exactly they're offering, and then there have been a handful of organizations that have looked at getting folks to donate money equivalent to a panel to then install a system on a local church or other nonprofit because those entities are not able to take advantage of the tax credit and so face a 30%, end up paying about 30% more at this point. So there are a few examples of that, and then there are a few other community solar program managing companies around the country that have begun to offer different types of community solar programs in different states.
Thank you. Also, Chad, what was the official name of the rural financing program?
It's the Rural Utility Service Energy Efficiency and Conservation Loan Program.
Okay. We'll provide that and other links. I think you mentioned a couple other websites and such. We'll provide all of that when we send out the e-blast at the end of this webinar when we get it all recorded. Another question that we had was, who owns the electricity generated by a member's panel?
So we have, in our case, the energy output is purchased by, and this gets complicated, it's purchased by the production LLC from the ownership LLC, and the cooperative has a PPA with that, and then the energy is credited directly to the members.
Okay.
Yeah, it depends on the model. If the utility just simply owns the system, then they would be purchasing all of the output from that system and then passing some form of benefit onto a ratepayer that signs up for the program. Under some programs in states that allow virtual or remote or aggregate net metering, the utility purchases the electricity from the system and then also allows net metering credits to go on participants' bills. So it really just depends on the state regulatory structure and what's allowed, or the utility's own just billing and tracking systems and how they allow those benefits to pass and then depends on who ultimately owns the system. But usually the utility is at some point the off-taker for the power.
Okay. Ted, can you just roughly give a timeline of the process, how long it took you to walk through the process of deciding that you were going to have community solar and then actually, full implementation?
Yeah, it took 3 years to research and develop the project, and that horizon is really shortened up now since we do have a turnkey model that's available to cooperatives all over the country that would want to use this specific type of model. But in our case, it took about 3 years, and then another year from the time I got approval from our board until it was online.
Great. Chad, you might have a better idea of the answer to this question. How long does it take roughly for a community solar program to offset its carbon footprint during the creation of the infrastructure?
So typically the embedded energy or the embedded carbon in solar PV panels are offset within the first 2 years of production. So there could be small variation in that depending on how far you're driving the panels to be installed, but the embedded energy, the amount of energy that it takes to make the panels is offset within well within 2 years. And the panels last about the warranties are now about 25 years, and there are panels that are operational from the 1970s. And 80s that are still producing 80% of their expected output. So over the lifespan, it's paying back any of its carbon impacts, probably 15 or more times over.
Thanks. Couple questions coming in here, but one of them was, Ted, I think you mentioned, and Chad, you also mentioned, but Ted, specifically, how does the cooperative address the ongoing maintenance expenses? Is that just captured how's that cost captured and addressed?
In our model, that's all part of the initial purchase price. So that was brought in up front. So all the maintenance, insurance, property lease, O&M costs, that's all figured in up front and spread out through the useful life of the project.
Great.
Yeah, and that's how the majority of those are structured. And in general, the ongoing maintenance is very, very low. There is probably an inverter replacement over the life of the project. The panels don't generally need to be cleaned as long as you get some rain. If an individual panel goes out, that can be swapped out relatively inexpensive way. But in general, the industry experience in O&M costs, they're pretty low.
Great. Ted, is the Iowa Economic Development Authority including your REC and its solar power streamlining project?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. And a follow-up on that is, how are others in your state learning about and from your model? What's kind of been the outreach?
Well, it's been tremendous. I don't know how many presentations I've given similar to this to the industry. And I'm also a member of SEPA, with Chad listed as one of his links, and gave presentations there, statewide association of our industry, testified at the state capitol. So there's been a tremendous amount of outreach and discussion industry-wide about community solar. A lot of utilities, both IOUs and cooperatives now are involved with projects.
Great. This is related to battery and storage potential. Is there storage potential for the community solar project, or do homes have their own battery storage, or how does that work with your model?
Yeah, in fact, in the original draft that we had, I had battery storage in there. I had a quote from a company, Minnesota-based company, in fact, that actually went out of business before we came online. But we decided not to go forward with it. It was almost, at that time, half again what the total project cost would have been for the materials. Very expensive. So we did not, we declined to go forward with it at that time, but we can add it on at any time and are very interested in making that a part of our project down the road.
Great. And one last question. What is the ideal community size for community solar?
Whatever the appetite of the member consumer is. In our case at Tri-County, we started out with a 40 kW system, and 2 weeks after we announced the program, it was sold out. So the board elected to increase it to the maximum size that would fit in the location we had, where we ended up with the 74, and we're about 87. We are 87% subscribed at that time. At this time, Hawkeyes is at 50% subscribed. So. And I've talked to people all over the country, and it really ranges. I would say on average, from the people that I've talked to and the numbers that I've seen, a good deal of them are in that 75% subscribed rate or above. So it's whatever consumer demand would be for your area. You know, you just have to do your best research up front and see where it falls when you actually offer the project up.
Excellent. Well, thank you both, Chad and Ted, again for sharing your afternoon and expertise with us all. And for the attendees, thank you for your participation. We will archive this on our website, and as registrants, you shall receive, we'll send out the archived version along with links and any extra information. I know Chad had a couple of things he wanted to pass along, so we will do that. And thanks again for your participation. Have a great afternoon.